The United States has long presented itself as a beacon of freedom and democracy, a shining city upon a hill. However, in their compelling book, The Myth of American Idealism, Noam Chomsky and Nathan J. Robinson challenge this narrative. They argue that US foreign policy since World War II has been driven by elite interests, often at the expense of global peace. Chomsky and Robinson expose the hypocrisy that underpins much of US foreign policy. They argue that the US has consistently prioritized its own economic and geopolitical interests, even when doing so has meant supporting dictatorships and engaging in devastating military interventions. This pursuit of hegemony, they contend, has resulted in a world plagued by conflict, inequality, and human suffering. Through a rigorous examination of historical events, they demonstrate how the US has intervened in other nations under the guise of promoting democracy, while propping up repressive regimes. This pattern of interventionism has had disastrous consequences for millions, particularly in the global South. This book serves as a stark reminder that we must not accept uncritically the narratives presented by those in power. Chomsky and Robinson urge us to confront the uncomfortable truths about the impact of US foreign policy on the world. Chomsky and Robinson provide a sweeping overview of US foreign policy since World War II, documenting a pattern of interventionism that contradicts American ideals. The post-war period, often portrayed as a time of American benevolence, was marked by a relentless pursuit of global dominance. The authors trace this pattern back to the early Cold War, when the US adopted a policy of containment aimed at preventing the spread of communism. This policy quickly morphed into a justification for intervening in any country deemed a potential threat to US interests. From the overthrow of democratically elected governments in Latin America to the support for brutal dictatorships in Africa and Asia, Chomsky and Robinson expose the hypocrisy at the heart of US foreign policy. The US has consistently prioritized its own strategic and economic interests over the well-being of people in other countries, often with devastating consequences. The authors provide a wealth of historical examples to support their claims, drawing on declassified documents, scholarly research, and first-hand accounts. Their analysis is both comprehensive and incisive, offering a powerful critique of the myths that have long shaped our understanding of America's role in the world. This historical perspective is crucial for understanding the true nature of US foreign policy. It challenges us to rethink the narratives we have been taught. The author's work is a call to critically examine the past to better understand the present. The Vietnam War stands as a stark testament to the human cost of America's pursuit of global dominance. Chomsky and Robinson provide a searing indictment of US involvement in Southeast Asia, highlighting the devastating consequences of its interventionist policies. They argue that the war in Vietnam was not a tragic mistake, but a deliberate act of aggression, driven by a desire to contain communism and maintain US hegemony. The authors detail the brutality of the war, from the indiscriminate bombing campaigns to the use of chemical weapons like Agent Orange. They also highlight the role of US propaganda in sanitizing the war for the American public. Chomsky and Robinson's analysis extends beyond Vietnam to encompass the wider US involvement in Southeast Asia, including the secret bombings of Laos and Cambodia. These often overlooked aspects of the conflict demonstrate the callous disregard for human life that characterized US actions in the region. The legacy of US intervention in Southeast Asia continues to cast a long shadow. Chomsky and Robinson's account serves as a powerful reminder of the human cost of war and the dangers of unchecked militarism. Chomsky and Robinson argue that US intervention in the Middle East is driven by a desire to control oil reserves. They critique US policy for fueling conflict and instability. US involvement dates back to the Cold War, countering Soviet influence by supporting friendly regimes. This led to propping up authoritarian rulers and stifling democratic movements. The 2003 Iraq invasion, based on false pretenses, unleashed chaos and instability. It paved the way for sectarian violence and groups like ISIS. The US sides with Israel in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict despite the occupation of Palestinian territories. This policy exacerbates regional tensions and ongoing conflict. The authors call for a re-evaluation of US policy for a more balanced approach. Chomsky and Robinson argue that Latin America has long been viewed by the United States as its backyard, a region where it has asserted its dominance through economic, political, and military means. The authors provide a comprehensive overview of US interventionism in Latin America, documenting a history of supporting coups, propping up dictatorships, and undermining democratically elected governments. The United States has consistently sought to prevent the emergence of independent left-wing governments in Latin America, fearing they would challenge its economic and geopolitical interests. To this end, the United States has repeatedly intervened in the region, often with devastating consequences for local populations. Chomsky and Robinson provide numerous examples of US interference, from the overthrow of Jacobo Arbenz in Guatemala to the support for Augusto Pinochet in Chile. And these interventions were motivated by a desire to protect US corporate interests and maintain hegemony in the region. The authors also highlight the role of the United States in supporting right-wing death squads and paramilitary groups responsible for widespread human rights abuses. These groups, often trained and funded by the United States, were used to suppress dissent and maintain authoritarian regimes. The legacy of US interference in Latin America continues to impact the region today. Chomsky and Robinson argue that the end of the Cold War did not bring about an end to US interventionism. Instead, the US has sought to maintain its global dominance by confronting emerging powers like China and Russia. The US has adopted a policy of containment towards China, seeking to limit its rise through diplomatic, economic, and military means. This includes strengthening military alliances in the Asia-Pacific region and engaging in provocative military exercises near Chinese territory. Chomsky and Robinson highlight the U.S. quote, S role in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, arguing that the expansion of NATO eastward has escalated tensions with Russia. The US has shown little interest in pursuing a diplomatic solution, preferring to use Ukraine as a proxy in its rivalry with Russia. The authors argue that the U.S. quote, S confrontational approach towards China and Russia risks provoking a new Cold War. They call for a more cooperative and multilateral approach to international relations based on dialogue and diplomacy. This approach is essential for global peace and security. Chomsky and Robinson argue that the US media plays a crucial role in manufacturing consent for the country's foreign policy. The media often serves as a mouthpiece for the government and corporate interests, uncritically promoting official narratives. The media's complicity is achieved through framing, sourcing, and sensationalism. Issues are framed in a way that supports the government's agenda, focusing on certain aspects while downplaying others. The media relies heavily on government officials and establishment figures as sources, giving their perspectives disproportionate weight. Sensationalism focuses on stories that evoke fear, anger, or patriotism, mobilizing public support for aggressive policies. The media's failure to challenge the dominant narrative on US foreign policy has had a profound impact on public opinion. The American public is largely unaware of the true extent of US interventionism and its devastating consequences. Chomsky and Robinson call for a more critical and independent media that holds power to account. A free and vibrant press is essential for a functioning democracy. It allows citizens to make informed decisions about their government's actions. Chomsky and Robinson do not shy away from confronting the human cost of US foreign policy. They meticulously document the devastating consequences of US interventionism, from the millions killed in wars to the countless others displaced or impoverished. The human cost of US empire is often hidden from view, obscured by media propaganda and government secrecy. The US has a moral obligation to confront the consequences of its actions and provide reparations for the harm it has caused. Chomsky and Robinson's account is a searing indictment of the human cost of militarism and the pursuit of global dominance. The US must move away from its current militaristic foreign policy and embrace a more peaceful approach to international relations. Foreign policy is not just an abstract matter of geopolitical strategy, but a matter of life and death for millions. The authors urge us to remember the human faces behind the statistics. They call for a foreign policy that prioritizes peace, justice, and human dignity. This moral reckoning is essential for a just and humane world. Despite the grim picture they paint, Chomsky and Robinson end their book on a hopeful note. They argue that a more just and peaceful world is possible if people are willing to challenge the status quo. The authors call for a fundamental shift in US foreign policy, away from militarism and towards diplomacy and cooperation. The US must abandon its pursuit of global hegemony and embrace a multilateral approach to international relations. This includes working with other countries to address common challenges like climate change, poverty, and inequality. Informed citizen action is crucial in challenging the status quo. Readers are urged to educate themselves about US foreign policy and hold their elected officials accountable. By working together, we can create a more just and peaceful world. The author's call to action is a powerful reminder that we are not powerless in the face of injustice.